Welcome back to Your 1230, the only podcast where our guests tell their story with the help of 12 questions in just 30 minutes. I'm your host, Mike Salitro, and tonight we are thrilled to be joined by Rachel King. Rachel is a serial entrepreneur starting at the age of 12. The work ethic and drive at an early age led to 7 years of military service. Utilizing the disciplined skills, she moved forward owning multiple businesses and acquired the desire to continue expanding her talents. The passion for law was instilled in her from birth from her father's law career, so she followed in his footsteps, opening her law firm in 2014. The combination of entrepreneurship, discipline training, and the understanding of law allows her to be the rising leader for California, Arizona, Texas, and Kentucky, with her firm focusing on strategic litigation, family law, probate and trust, elder law, elder abuse, conservatorships, and guardianships. Alongside her impressive career, she is a proud wife and mother and loved by her community for her continued service and outreach. Rachel, welcome. We are really thrilled to be speaking with you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
Of course, and we're excited, and that is a hell of a bio and background. So we'll kind of start here. The intersection of entrepreneurship and law, while it makes sense to me and to some, sometimes it's not really clear how those two things go together. How do you have both of those passions and expertise? How do you tie them together to help your clients?
I was first raised in families of entrepreneurs. So my parents got divorced when I was very young, and actually, in both households, my parents were self employed. So I think the idea of business ownership was very natural for me. I saw the flexibility that came with having your own business. And I was very familiar, even though I didn't maybe realize it as a child, with the hardships or the benefits of owning your own business. So when I became a lawyer, now keep in mind, when I became a lawyer, I was maybe older than some other people, right? Was married. I had 3 children by the time I passed the bar. I'd been in the Army for 7 years. So I was at a different point maybe in my life than others. And the idea of going and getting a job at a law firm and kind of having them own you at the beginning was not something that I was willing to do. The Army had already owned me. So I thought, oh gosh, again, I wasn't afraid of owning my own firm. So that's kind of how the two married, was that I was a lawyer and then I wanted to own my own business and practice law my way.
That's a good answer. So thank you for painting that picture. I do have a few follow-ups. First, let's start with the three kids in the bar. As somebody who was older than when I went to law school and took the bar, I appreciated the real world experience before, so that was helpful. How were you able to kind of prioritize all what you had going on to not only pass law school, but it is intense those few months studying for the bar. How did you balance all that, and how did you ultimately pass?
Well, I think being a mom and being married really helped me learn how to compartmentalize in a very, very effective way through law school. I simply didn't have the luxury of studying all the time or spending hours and hours in the library, because I had to be mom, I had to be wife, I had these other uh, I guess, personas that I had to take on. So when I was studying through law school, I learned how to compartmentalize. When I got to the bar, I had to earn money right away. There was no like, oh, if I don't pass, what's going to happen? It was like, okay, my family had committed to me through law school, so I better pass the first time. So I really made that kind of my focus. And I'll be honest, I studied for the bar for 5 months prior. I don't remember major parts of my life at that time because I had so much adrenaline going, and I was really so hyper focused on the bar because I I, I had to become, supporting. I had to help support our family. Now, as luck would have it, I passed the bar. I think it was California has a pretty low or a pretty high fail rate.
Yep.
So I'm very fortunate that I did. But for me, when I took the bar, it was, I'm going to dedicate 5 months to studying. I'm going to allow myself to move away from, not move away physically, but like detach from my kids as much as I need to focus on the bar, because then I'll never have to do it again. And then I can truly go back to being a mom right after that, rather than having it drag on for years.
Now that compartmentalization makes sense, especially when you have the experience of having many personas or balancing many roles to kind of by necessity do that. So thank you for walking us through that. Uh, so in your modest, California is one of the handful of states with the most difficult bar to pass. So that's it's not an exaggeration when you say that. Um, but you mentioned wanting to start your own firm to have the kind of ability to control your schedule and control what your practice looked like. What did day one, or how did you once you find out, hey, I did pass. Now what? You had your dad to model after, but how did you know what to do, or what did you do?
Yeah, first of all, we were living on a shoestring budget at that point. My husband was the sole supporter of the family. So we didn't have a lot of money. And I took $1,800 and I thought, how am I going to open my own firm with $1,800? I had previous experience opening companies, so I understood, the one foot in front of the other, some of the basics. But with $1,800, you don't get very far. I literally said, okay, I'm going to take 8 hours a day because that's what I would do if I was working. And I'm going to take that 8 hours and just tell people I'm a lawyer. And whether that is in the community or at networking events or friends or family, whatever it is, I'm going to say I'm a lawyer until I have 8 hours worth of work to do. And I will tell you, one of the best things about being a lawyer is if you are one, you will find clients. Clients will come to you, even if you are brand new. So that's how I got my clients. And then I really relied very heavily on actually my dad and my cousin to help me find my footing as a lawyer. It takes a long time to learn how to practice law. And so they were very helpful.
Okay, thank you for that. And the advice seems basic, but it really can be applied across the board, no matter what field you're in. And it's probably something most people are going, I don't want to do that. But if I don't have a full day of work, I need to go out there and develop a pipeline of new clients or people who know this is what she does. So if I ever need this person, that's who I'm going to contact. So, I mean, that exemplifies the work ethic. And while most people would say, yeah, of course you should do it, I would guess 90+% won't do it because it's difficult, hard, and it's not glamorous. So thank you for just kind of spelling that out. And that makes a ton of sense as far as where to start. I didn't want to skip over the army part. How did you decide that's where you wanted to spend 7 years of your life as well?
Yes. So that was, when you're 18 and you graduate high school, you think you know everything. And I quickly learned I didn't know everything. And I was also quickly learned I was not very employable. And the cost of living, people say it's high now. I think it was very high back when I turned 18. 18-year-olds simply can't afford to live. So I tried college right out of high school and I wasn't ready for college mentally. Even though I knew I wanted to be a lawyer, my mind was not in the game. So after a myriad of things that, an 18-year-old does, which I will spare you and your audience, I finally was left kind of with no choice. I had nothing. And I thought, okay, my mom and dad kicked me out of my house. So I literally had these thoughts. I said, if I can join the military and get a day to ship to basic training, I can probably go back to my mom and be like, please let me sleep on your couch until I ship out. And it worked. I was able to get a date for basic training, I think 2 weeks later. And it was, I don't want to say it was like my last resort. It turned out to be the best thing that I did at that age, but it was not like a goal of mine. I do not come from a military family at all.
Okay. So going back to those networking events that you were attending when you started your law firm, if you introduce yourself as a lawyer and it's like, oh, I spent 7 years in the army, did you have a go-to story, or if somebody followed up that you tell them, or it's like, this is what it's like to be in the military, or even thinking back at it now, is there something like, yes, if you knew this, this is kind of what my experience was like?
I actually am not a veteran that goes and sort of talks about my military experience everywhere I go. I'm so grateful for what it did. I enjoyed my military experience. I learned a huge amount about myself. I still take it, the discipline and the integrity, some of that still carries through, but I never really walked around saying it. I still don't. Now, I will be honest, the only reason I oftentimes say I'm in the military is because a lot of people want to hear it and it means more to other people. But when I first went to networking groups, I was very aware that I was a brand new attorney. I was very aware that I came into the legal field at a time where it was still, heavily populated with the previous generation that did did their things their way, and I was a millennial coming in disrupting a little bit. So I really tried to stick when I sold myself as to why I or how I practiced law, right? Like what I was going to do different. And my core value then and still is today is to work together with my clients in a very approachable and team kind of environment, or team with, as a team with my client, rather than, you know, we're equals. We're just, I'm an attorney and, you know, you're something else. So I really wanted to bring that to the table as an attorney. And that was how I sold myself when I first started. And I kind of stuck with that dialogue, and it worked.
No, I love that collaborative kind of level setting or a level playing field approach with your clients, because as you described, the kind of coming in as the millennial, that the say the mindset of an attorney beforehand was very similar. I'm the attorney, you're the client. I'll decide how we move forward, and may not have been, let's just say, a level playing field for everybody involved. So that is a novel approach. You have a practice in multiple
Now it's
states.
the norm, right? But it wasn't.
Yes, it certainly is more the norm now, but there are different approaches that are employed in some areas. Having a practice in multiple states, how are you able to grow that out, and what does that look like on a day to day managing, that kind of scope?
COVID helped a huge amount. I originally took the Arizona bar after the California bar because I wanted the kind of California exit plan. And I didn't want to feel like I was stuck in California, and California doesn't have reciprocity with other states. So I took Arizona so I'd have a way out. Since Arizona, I did Texas and Kentucky, but I've been able to use my Arizona bar to get into those other states. Prior to COVID, I wasn't doing a whole lot with my other bar licenses because we were still in the legal field really relying on in-person everything. Clients wanted to meet in person, judges wanted to meet in person, really was all in person. And so COVID has allowed, well, actually catapulted the legal field, I think, into at least more recent technology where remote appearances, remote representation is maybe more the norm than the traditional in-person approach. And so that allows me now to really take my skill as a litigator and offer it into different states like Arizona, Texas, and Kentucky, where they don't have as many, I don't want to say specialized because I'm not allowed to, but attorneys with that kind of honed skill set. Because now I only really have to appear, well, most legislators have passed that remote appearances must be allowed in court hearings unless there's some kind of specific circumstance. So really, I appear mostly in court remotely unless it's a trial. And then whether it's the court down the street or a courtroom in Kentucky, I'll be in person for the trial. I think putting on trials in person is not only more effective, but a whole lot more fun.
So some people will hear litigating and being in front of a judge and jury as fun, and they'll think, I can't see that. But being a litigator, that's what drives you, and that's the kind of practice you have. How did you decide that's what you wanted to focus your practice on, as far as what type of law, and then the litigation piece? What is it like being there on day one, making your opening argument, and how does that? I can see in your face. How does that still excite you, and what about that does kind of drives you to keep moving your firm forward?
Litigation, I didn't start in litigation. I started as my own, sole private attorney, and I basically was taking any case that walked into my office, as many new attorneys do. So for the first few years, I would say maybe the first 6 or 7 years, I really had a split practice of transactional work and in court litigated work. And some of my cases would be litigated, but we would end up settling. And even though I'm a litigator, I want to say I'm a big advocate of settlement. But that aside, over the years, I discovered that I'm really, really good at litigation. I enjoy being in the courtroom. I love courtroom appearances. And so it was kind of natural that I decided, well, since I'm now fortunate enough to do what I love rather than do what I have to. And I really love the courtroom experience. As for trial, As attorneys, we work so hard to put together all of the evidence, to get our client's story, to negotiate, to do all of these things so that we can get them as close to their goal as possible. And trial, to me, I know a lot of attorneys get stressed about it, but it's like, oh, we finally did it, right? It's like hanging the artwork on the wall. We put all of this together, and now I just get to present it. And I think, quite frankly, it's fun because it's maybe the easiest part for me because we've already done it. We already know exactly what's going to happen, what's going to be said, and now we get to put our client's voice in front of a judge and tell the story, and then maybe let the judge or the jury decide. Hopefully, we did a good enough job.
Okay. So I really like how you kind of go step by step through that and ultimately end up that this is the something we've already done because you've done your homework, you've prepped, you know your case, you know what the law that you're going to argue, you know the points that you want to make. But for your client, likely they are not as seasoned as you are. They're not as familiar with the courtroom setting. How do you prepare them for what it's like to sit there either for a full day, a few days, or in an environment that they may never have stepped foot into and hopefully never step foot again in some of these issues?
I do give off, not all the time, but I do oftentimes give my clients the option to appear and sit in court every single day. I prefer them to sit next to me, but the areas that I practice, I have some older clients, and I also recognize that being in trial can be very stressful. So I don't need my clients present unless they're testifying. It's helpful because then I don't know all of the lies, right? It's hard for me to, even though I've done a lot of work to prep, having a client sitting there is very helpful. But I try and keep everything really simple. I don't think it's necessary, and a lot of people may disagree. I don't think it's necessary to make it overly complex for my clients when we're going into the actual trial days. They're already so stressed out. The more things I say, don't forget this, don't forget this, don't forget this, the more stressed they're going to be. So when I'm prepping them to sit in court, I say, I'm going to give you a pad of paper and I want you to write everything down. It can be questions for me, it can be things that you think are a lie, anything you want, you write on the paper and you can pass to me. Other than that, I want them to sit quietly. I want them to avoid body language. I don't want the sighs or the eye rolls and I don't want any of that. I want you to sit quietly in your seat with your hands on your lap and then write. And that is pretty much the only direction I give them. Any more than that, and I think they start to stress out. When a client takes the stand, I also tell them, just tell the truth, answer the question that's been asked, but ultimately this is your time to tell the story. So stick with the questions, stick with what you've already said, with the story, and do the best that you can. And honestly, even the best client witnesses still get stressed. Being on the stand is very stressful. So the more I can reduce their stress by not having them worry, the better.
And I think that's the thing right there that you identify that it's obviously on its face, it's a stressful situation given all the things at play. So you want it to go well. You want it to be uh, a good outcome for your team, but you can't put too much on your client. Otherwise, all you were going to do is ratchet up that stress and lead to something that you had not planned for or an unintended consequence that would take away from the quality of your case. So I think as you kind of walk through it there, you identify what you're looking to do and give them something to write on, which will help pass the notes. And you give them enough background that it's here's what we're going to do, here's what we're going to avoid, here's the outcome we want. So I think that's you paint a really good picture there. Uh, you mentioned that when you started your practice that you wanted people to know that you're an attorney and to reach out to you. Do people know when they are in a situation where calling an attorney makes sense? Is it often too late when they call you, or how do you kind of counsel people on if this comes up, I'm the person that you should look to contact?
I think it's always a great idea to have a relationship with an attorney, because the last thing I would want personally, even not as an attorney, is to find myself in a situation that could result in legal conflict and have to go to Google. And while I love Google and I get lots of referrals from Google, really knowing an attorney is helpful. There are people all across the board for a variety of reasons. They try and look out for or reach out to an attorney. Maybe they got served, or maybe they got a judgment and they had ignored a lawsuit, or whatever it is in their case. So I don't know that I can actually say there's a most common time for people to reach out to an attorney. I get cases in all different phases. But I will say what I recommend is if you have an attorney that's trustworthy, then when you call them and you tell them what's going on, they should be able to say, yes, you need an attorney, or really, you don't need an attorney right now, right? I regularly tell people, like, while I would love to work with you, you don't need me. This is not a situation that I'm going to be any help in at this point, but here's what to look out for. And so I say that to say, if you have a, I don't want to say anything I'm not supposed to, but if you find yourself with a bad attorney, they might just sell you to get some billables. So you want to make sure that you reach out to a trustworthy attorney. And then what's the worst that happens? They say, no, I don't think you need an attorney. Well, at least you know, and you can, again, be less stressed out than you, and not being worried about what if.
Okay. No, that's good advice. The ability to have a relationship with someone, uh, either an attorney or someone who can guide you to the right professional help should that time come up beforehand. So having that relationship makes sense beforehand. I'm changing gears for a moment. The Your bio referenced having entrepreneurship background as early as the age of 12. Do you recall what any of those early ventures were?
Oh, do I? I mean, I had full blown businesses. I didn't realize when I was 12 that they were quite as cool, maybe, as I do now, especially having kids. And I'm like, why aren't my kids doing that? So when I was 12 years old, I started babysitting. I happened to live in a community that didn't have babysitters. The track home area that I lived in, I was really the only one. So I very quickly became kind of overbooked. And I remember when I was trying, well, before I even was overbooked, I was trying to get business. And I told my mom I wanted to go get business cards made so I could pass them out to all of the people in our neighborhood. I thought you needed to have a business name, so I called it Baby City. And then as I got busier, I just kind of passed the jobs out to my friends. And to the extent that you could have a real life babysitters club, maybe it was similar to that. That was my first one. That was at 12. Following 12, I think when I was 15, I became a lifeguard and worked at the YMCA. At 16, I started teaching swimming lessons at the Y. And so at that time, I opened a swim instructor company where we would do in-home swim lessons. So again, I did a lot of them. And then I had other swim instructors that I would pay to come and do the lessons I couldn't make. And it kind of just went up from there, right? I kept starting a new company with a new idea.
And those are, I mean, you joke, you kind of laughed, you said it, but those are really good examples about being able to have a skill, deliver that skill, then ultimately delegate it, scale it, teach others to do it. And that's how small business kind of grows and um, becomes a profitable venture in some ways, is the ability to have those avenues for getting work done. You also joke that my kids are not and doing this, why not? I think that's a good question parents ask is, what can I do to have my child be more entrepreneurial uh, thinking, or think, I don't want to just think the only thing you need to do is go to college, get a job, and that's it. That there are other avenues out there. So growing up in a household where you had parents kind of exemplify that for you is one way to do it. What is a way that either our children or younger colleagues that kind of show that there are multiple ways to do things, and taking your own practice or your own business is one way to do it, and here is something that you should think about. Well, how can we do that better, do you think?
I think really teaching the value of money is an important thing that we can all do with our kids. Certainly, it's so fun to, I don't want to say spoil, but to give your kids all of the things, especially that you didn't have growing up. But teaching the value of money and showing that hard work actually earns the money, and that can be done through chores or through, teaching your child a budget, is really helpful. I have to say, I love my children, and they're very, very, they all do amazing things. They haven't opened any companies, but they still have an appreciation for money, and they understand that money doesn't just come from mom and dad. So like one of the things that we have done is that, look, well, first of all, I hate paying for credits on video games. I think it's ridiculous. So the rule is that I will never pay for those, and I won't even fund a chore that will pay for them. If you want that, you need to go earn money outside the household, right? Go to your neighbors, go do that. And so when they want something, they know that they can go out and earn money. But I think one of the biggest disservices that I see is, and I've tried so hard to not do it in my own kids, is to not have them understand the hard work that goes in to making the money. Money is not easy to come by. It's not hard to come by, but it doesn't just fall into your lap. It does take some work. And I think the more we can teach our children that if you work hard, you can earn money and you can make it, will naturally help with that. And showing them maybe that, I don't know, I personally think that you are either an entrepreneur or you're not, right? So maybe that's a different skill set, but understanding and appreciating money, I think, is the best way or the best thing we can do with our kids.
Now, that's a good distinction that you may not be able to be that person starting the business, but the work ethic piece of exemplifying that this hard work, this dedication is necessary for the monetary gain, regardless of what kind of employment or business you are running. So I think that makes a ton of sense. Somehow we are already coming up on time. Uh, we've talked a lot about what uh, your practice and your professional time looks like with such a kind of serious day to day. How do you relax, or what do you do to stay sharp in the courtroom, but to kind of de stress or take your mind off of the serious matters that you're dealing with on a daily basis?
Well, I rely a lot on compartmentalization. I think that's how you say it. But I do a lot of yoga. I run quite a bit, and I take some time just for me to kind of find peace and calm. I'm a big believer in meditation, whether it's through when I'm running or through a yoga practice, but really times to just allow all of it to come down so that I am more mentally fit, I guess, for dealing with the high stressors of my client base and my cases.
It's a good balance. It's a good way to look at it. Uh, we have covered a good amount of area, but is there something that I didn't ask you that I probably should have as we were talking here?
I think people need to not be afraid of attorneys. I guess that would be my biggest thing. Maybe that's, again, the millennial in me, but I really believe that knowledge is power. And if you can reach out and get the information, whether you've been wronged or you are being accused of wronging somebody else, right? The plaintiff defendant kind of situation, figuring out what your rights are is going to make you or give you the ability to make the best decisions that you can. So maybe you can't afford an attorney, but even paying for a consultation just so you can have the knowledge, I think, is one piece of advice that I wish everybody would just take with them, because otherwise it's so overwhelming. And law or a lawsuit can really change your life for good or for bad.
That's good. That's very good advice. Wrapping up here, where can our listeners find you, connect with you, or if they need your services, where should they do that?
I can be reached by phone or by text on my web. My phone number is on my website, thelawyerking.com. I'm also on all of the socials at The Lawyer King. So I would love it if, I put out videos and content with questions. So any questions you have, reach out at The Lawyer King. I'm happy to do my best to answer them. And I would love follows, and subscribes.
We will post all of that. The Lawyer King is a fantastic handle. Well done there.
Thank you.
And wish you nothing but the best going forward, Rachel. And thank you for joining us, and look forward to doing it again.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a blast.